Hey guys, today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a simple web chatting application using Express and Socket.io. To teach you guys how to make this simple web app, I'm going to make three separate videos. One video, which is this video, will focus on how to make just the app work. The second video will teach you how to style it up and make it look pretty. And the third one will teach you how to deploy this app to Heroku and make it public. So first, let's see what this app can do. So what you'll do is press this button, create new room, and it creates a unique room link, which you can share to people you want to chat with. And you can write your name. So I can write Seppa, and then I can type a message. So I can say like hello. And to demonstrate, I can copy this and I can paste it in another tab, and I can make it into a new um, window, snap it to the right, and snap this to the left. And now you see, if I press send over here, it sends instantly. And you can see on both sides. And same thing, you can do it over here. And you can write your name, such as Bob. And look, when I type over here, like hello Seppa, you can see it shows I'm typing on the other side. Over here, it says Bob is typing. So that's another thing we're going to make. And now you press send, and it instantly sends. So let's dive into making this application. I've headed into VS Code, my editor of choice, but feel free to use any editor you want. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up Terminal, and I'm going to cd into my directory that I want to create this project in. And then the first thing we can do is create a new directory. So right make dir, and so I'm going to call this chat app-demo, and then I'm going to cd into chat app-demo. And now what you guys want to do is set up your basic Node app. And the way you do this is just write npm init. And now this is going to ask you a few questions, like what should the package name be? So in my case, I'm going to call it chat app. And then, yes, I want it version 1. The description I can just say is basic chat app using Express and Socket IO. Entry point basically is going to be the file that our Express server is in. So I'm going to call it server.js, but feel free to call it whatever you want. And test command, we're just going to say nothing for now, and nothing for git repository, no keywords. And author, I'm just going to say Zeppa, no license, and yes, this is okay. So now we're good. Now if you go over to open folder, I can open this chat app demo we created. I'm going to select this folder, and you can see it created a package.json for us. And now all we want to do is install some dependencies. So the first dependency we're going to install is Express. We're just going to save that, and you can see it's installing. It's almost done. Yep. And next thing we're going to install is Socket.io. Socket.io, and also save that to dependencies. And that's going to take a second. And after that, we're going to be installing two more things. So the other thing is we're going to be using EJS. So we're going to do npm install EJS dash save. X that out. And the last thing we're going to install for now is UUID to create our unique room IDs. Also save that. And also, I forgot one thing. We're going to be installing one developer dependency, which is NodeMon, which basically will just restart our server every time you make a change, which is really useful. So we're going to install that too. So NodeMon dash save. And that should be the last thing. And while that finishes up, in our package.json, once nodemon installs, um, basically we want to say before testing our app nodemon, and actually here we should be writing the file that's going to be our basically our file that should run every time we write npm test. So, and you want to write nodemon because that will tell it to so that'll just make everything work properly. Okay, so now what we want to do in our root folder, we want to create a new file, and we're going to call this server.js or whatever you are calling this file, and we're going to create this, and there we go. And now what we're just going to do is, close this for a second, and we're going to write, we're going to get express into here. So express, and we can just do require to get that express module, right? Express, and then we're going to create an express app. So there's const app equal express, and there should get our app. And now the next thing we want to do is create a HTTP server. So we're going to write server equal require, and we want to require, we want to require HTTP, and we want to create a server. And in this, we're just going to pass in our app. After that, we want to also get socket.io. So we can just write io equals require socket.io, and we just want to pass in something, which is the server. So there we go. We got basically our thing set up. Now, what we want to do to open this in the web on our localhost, we want to make our server listen to a specific port. So listen, if I can spell, to a specific port, and we can just specify this port on the top. So we can call this const port equal, and we're just going to call this in our demo 3000. So it's going to be listening for port 2000. And now we can open this up in the web. So if I do this and I just snap it to the right, and I snap this to the left. Now if you see, if I type localhost 3000, it should do nothing yet because we're not giving it anything yet. So basically, we want to say app dot get, and we want to write on our root a response, and we want to just say response dot send, and we can just say hello world. And if you see this, oh whoops, we have a little bit of an error because it's not working. Well, we forgot to run our server, so we just need to do that. That's pretty important. So let's just write npm test. And as you can see, if you refresh this, now it should be working. Okay, so with that out of the way, now we can really get into building this. So what we want to do now is when we go on our root directory, we want to pass in we just want to render a basic file which just says create room, right? So we're going to be using AJS, so let's just set that up under this. So we can just write app dot set view engine, and we want to set it to EJS, so we can do that. And so that's good. And so we can actually now in our root directory create a folder called views. Inside of this, we're going to create basically our EJS files. So we can write our index.ejs, and that's created. And Now, if you see over here, we can write response.render, and we can just render the file name, which is index.egs. So we can just write index.egs. And if you write this and save this and refresh this, well, nothing should happen because we didn't write anything in our index.egs. But what we can just do is set up our basic boilerplate, and we can just give it a title of home-chat app, and then in the body we can just write a button, and give it a class of create chat or room, and we can just write create chat room, and that's basically the HTML mainly, other than one other thing. The one other thing is when we click this, we want to redirect it to the room directory, and then our server is going to redirect it to a unique room. So we can just say on click, and we can just click actually, um, and you can just write a lowercase the function we want to call. We can just say create room, and we can just create some script tags on the bottom. So let's just create some script tags, and here we can just write a function called create room, and all we want to do is get our origin. So we can just do locate, so window dot location dot origin, and what we want to do is just console log our origin once. So if we console log that, refresh this, you will see in the console, if you press create new room, we get this, and then all we want to do is say our window dot location is equal to let's use some temperate literals. So we can just say origin slash room. And with that done, if we exit out, and we can just refresh this, and when we create room, you can see it redirects us. So that's good. And that's basically it, what we're going to do for index.egs. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to make the code for the slash room part, which will basically redirect us to that unique room. So what we can do is app.get slash room, and what we want to do is the request and the response, and then we want to response star redirect to basically want to redirect to slash room slash and a specific room ID. And remember the UUID module we installed. We can get that, so we can just write v4-uuid and set it equal to require UUID, and UUID is a function, so we can just say UUID. And now if we go back to this and refresh it now, quick create room, it goes to slash room, then redirects us to this unique ID. So now what we need to do is we need to write some code that shows up some HTML when we go to the specific room. So we can just say app.get slash room and a colon and ID, and just basically this is saying that anything after this is going to be stored in a request parameter of ID, and we can start rec request and response, and set equal to arrow function, and we want it so when our response is gonna be a render of a room.egs, which we need to create now. So let's create that. In our views, let's create another file called room.egs and just create the basic HTML. And let's just call this room dash chat app. And let's just create a div. Actually, let's create a and let's just call this chat or messaging section, and that's that. And we can create a form tag, and inside of that we can have a few things like an input. We can just say display dash name, and we can give this type text, and we can have another input, and we can call this text message, and below that we can have another input, and we can just call this send button, and we can get this type of submit, and we can give this a value of send. And now let's just go all the way back here, refresh this, and press create chat room. As you can see, it redirects here and it shows the code we just created. Okay, so now what we want to do is basically do a few fix-ups to this. So what we're going to do is basically create some style tags. So style, whoops, did not spell that right. Style. Now what we want to do is a few fix-ups. Now we are not going to do too much styling, just a few to just make it look a little bit proper. So we're going to grab this form, and we can just call this class. We can call this text controls, and text controls, and we can just do display flex, and then flex direction column. And we actually want to create a separate div for this because we want the submit button next to the text message input. So we're going to create this div, fix it up a little bit, give it a class of text, not text, but like message div. And now if we refresh our page, you should see it looks something like this. And it's okay if the top one is longer. All we need to do is a few things like grab our other div, which is message div. So we can just do dot message div, and we can basically make it also display flex, and width is 100%, and we can give we can just get text message over here. We can give this a width of 100%, if I can write a semicolon. And we just want to grab the send button over here and write send button, and the send button we just want to write a min width of 100 pixels. And the last, most likely the last thing we're going to do for HTML is just add some placeholders. So for our text message, we can just write type a message ... And for our display name input, we can just say a placeholder of display name. And now if you see, if you refresh this, it should be looking decent. And we just want to get this message section up here, and we can just make it so we give it a height of like 200 pixels and a width of 100% and a border of 1 pixel solid black, and that should be it. And it looks like that. And we can just do overflow when we have too many messages. Overflow Y to auto. So now we can head over to our server.js, and now we can start using Socket.io and detecting when a user goes to a room, like detect when that happens, basically when they get connected. So to do this, what we're gonna do is on the bottom, we're gonna write io dot on connection. We'll get something called socket, and we can just write this, and we can just write console.log. We just want to console log user joined, basically. Now you see, if you refresh this, it doesn't actually show up here. That's because we also have to set up some code on the client side. So what we can do first is in our room.ejs, we can set up a script tag at the top, and we can give it a source of this. Whoops, that did not work out. This, it does not want to be pasted. So we can give a source of socket io slash socket io dot js. And we just slash before there too. And now this is good. Now what we want to do is link up another script file. So we can just write script, and we can give it a source of let's just give it, we can call this file room.js. And now we need to create a folder in our main directory, called public. Inside this, we can create some files called um, room.js. That's going to be one of them. And now you see, it's not going to work because basically when you open this up, Express doesn't give these static files to this directory. So access basically. So what we need to do is over here we need to write app dot basically use, and we want to say express dot static, and we want it to use the public folder, and this will go to our this will allow access for the the origin basically to access the public static files. But we want it to the room and the unique ID directory to access these files. So we can write over behind that is basically slash room slash I slash colon ID, basically just any random ID. And now if we save this, and we can just like console.log testing, this file works. We can open console here, refresh this, and you see it successfully says testing over here. So that means that it is working. Now what we can do is whenever we render this room.egs, we want to pass a few variables in. And those few variables we can pass by passing in an object, and we can write. So one thing we want to pass in is the room ID basically, and we can set this equal to our request dot params dot ID, or basically whatever we call this. Um, and the other thing we want to pass in is a user ID. So we can just say user ID, and basically the way we can get a user ID is just by doing UUID in the function. And now that's good. And we can access those variables in our room.ejs, so we can just add a script file at the bottom, and we can just write one of them is room ID, and we can just set this equal to uh, this. It should be exactly this. And what are the variables called? So it's called room ID. And the other thing we want to get is the user ID. So you can write const user ID and set it equal to the same thing. Just replace the variable name. Sorry, equals to user ID. And that should be good. And now these variables we can access as also in our room.js. Now, all we need to do to make it so that our like IO over here detects connection and it console.logs user joined is just say const um, IO or socket is equal to IO. And now, if I refresh this, you should see in your terminal it says user joined, and successfully. That is great. So now all we want to do is, now we already know that when somebody joins this room, we can see it in our terminal, but we want it so we can also see it on our client side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna write socket dot emit, and we're gonna emit basically join room, and we're going to pass in a few things. We're going to pass in a user ID, and we're going to pass in a room ID, which are variables that we have from here. But one problem is that our script loads before this will load, so we just need to write diff first so it loads after all our HTML. So now it should work, and now what we're going to do is go to our server. Instead of writing this, we can just say socket dot on and join room. We can just get two variables, right? So we passed in user ID and room ID, right? So we can write user ID and room ID and write an error function. And basically inside of here, we can just say socket dot join. So we want to join the user to this room. So we can just write room ID. And we can just say socket dot to, basically, so anybody with this room ID, we want to broadcast because we don't want to tell ourselves that we joined. We want to tell others that we joined. So we can say broadcast, and then we can do emit. And so we can emit new member. And that should be it. Now all we need to do is go to our room.js and say socket.on new member. We also want to get their user ID, so let's just pass in the user ID. So let's say user ID, and let's get it here. So user, sorry, not that, user ID, and let's just console.log user ID. And now if you see, if you go to our console over here and we refresh it, you see nothing actually comes up, right? No user ID. But if we create two, um, you know, tabs of this open thing, and I see when we joined here, it's gonna show something because we joined on this tab. It's showing that the person joined, so we know it's working. So now we know that users are getting connected and all. So the next step, what we're gonna do is we can just leave this for now. We're gonna make it so that um, we can get our text message when we press send and our display name, and then send it over to the other users that are in our room. So first, we're gonna have to query select a lot of our HTML elements. So let's start off by query selecting our inputs. So let's query select text message. So we can just say on the top, um, const text message, message equals document dot query selector, um, dot query selector, and we want to query select this class. So we got our text message. We're going to do const. We have a few more things. We have the send button, so we can just say send button equal document dot query selector dot. We need to change this to send button, and we can also add const display name equals document dot query selector dot display name, if I'm correct. Well, let's just check if that's what it's called. Yep, it's called display name. And we want to also query select message section. So let's query select that. Const message section is equal to document dot query select dot message section, and we should of course select that. Oh, sorry, it's messaging section. So we're good. Now we got all this. Now what we want to do is basically um text message dot basically want to add an event listener to this, and we're going to call this input, and we want to on input. Actually, we don't want to get on input. We just want to actually get send button. So we want to get send button, and we want an add event listener of click, and we basically want on click to send a message, right? So we want to first of all get the text message. So we can just say const text equal document, sorry, not document, just text message dot value. We just want to get the value, not no value, just value. It gives an autofilling. I can just fix this by doing that. So we just want to get the value, and we can send this over. So we can just do socket dot emit, and we can emit new so emit message basically, and we can pass in the message basically. So we can pass in the text is equal to text, and we're gonna also pass in the user that is sending this. So user ID is going to be equal to user ID, and that should be good. And basically we can just write it over here, socket dot on emit message. We want to, well, we are going to get some things, right? We're going to get this object, right? So we can just say text object, and we can just say socket. We can actually just copy this line of code we used over here. And instead of passing that in, we can just pass in the text object, and not calling it new member, we can call it new message. And we also want the room ID, so let's actually pass in that. We forgot to pass in that, so we can just say room, so room ID, comma, text object, and we want to actually pass in that because we forgot to pass in that. So room ID, and now we have that passed in also, and everything should be working. Now we can just write socket dot on new message, we're going to get a text object, right? So we can just say text object. And basically, whenever we get this new message, we just want to do like a function called add text, which we haven't created yet, but we will. And we can just pass in text object into that. And we can just create a function temporarily called add text. And we can just write text. And we can just get a few things. So we can get the text and we can get the user. Yeah, we can get the user ID. And we can basically, for now, do nothing. What we also want to do is, instead of giving the user ID, it actually might be more helpful if we give the display name. So let's actually give the display name instead. So actually, yeah, let's give the display name instead. So let's just say display name dot value. So yes, we have display name and we just want to get its value. We pass in the display name dot value, and if you get that, we just want to change a few things. We just want to, actually, no, we're fine. If we call that, we just don't want to call it user ID. We want to call it when set this equal to, and we just want to call this display name, and instead of user ID, we just want to call this display name, and that should be good. Now, this will add a message every time you send for the other users, but we want to also make it so that when we press submit, it also just calls add text, right? So in the click submit, we want to also make it so we add the text. So let's just under socket.emit, or actually just here, we can just say basically add text. And instead of writing the object over here, we can just write const text object is equal to this, and we can just call this name, make a separate variable const name that, and apparently we don't, yeah, so that should be good. And basically we just want to pass in text object. So that's, now it's all good. And we just want to do one other thing is we want to prevent default of the submit function. So now nothing will happen, but because we need to add the text. So when we're adding the text, we want to actually create a div first of all. So we can just say document dot create element, and we want to call this div. And in the div, we're gonna have const text p paragraph and document dot create element. We just want to create a p tag, and this p dot inner text is gonna equal to text. And for now, we're just gonna keep it simple and just like this, and we can just say div dot append child text p, and we want to make it so that this div is appended by the message section. So we can just say message section dot append, sorry, append child div. And now if you refresh the page, refresh this page, exit the console, and we say Zappa, type hello, and press send. Whoops, I think we made an error. P is not defined on room 30. Oh, sorry, we meant to write text. P, and if you refresh this and we just write Zappa and we write hello, send. You see it's working, and over here it's not appearing. Why is that so? Appears here, and if I write over here, so hello, hey, P is not defined. Oh, we forgot to refresh the page. So now if you type SEPA, write hello, send it, cannot destructure, object null. Apparently it seems that a new message, text message, text object is null. So let's go back to our server. New message. You pass in text object. So let's just console dot log text object to see what's going on over here. So let's just write SEPA again. Hello, send over here. Okay, so text object is just not coming through. This could be because we're not sending the text object properly. So, oh, we forgot to write text object over here. That's why it's not working. Okay, so write that. And now, if you refresh this, and now if you refresh this, and write SEPA, and write hello, send it. It should appear on both sides. Yep, it's appearing on both sides. It's good. We just don't have display names appearing. So what we can do simply for that is make it so we write const name p equal document actually, yeah, so sorry, my bad, document query, actually no, sorry, document create element, and we create a p, and we can just say name p dot inner text is equal to display name, and we can just make it so div dot append child name p. And one other thing is we want name p to also have a date inside of it. So let's just I'm sorry, not a date, a time. So what we can do to get the time is first write const date equal new date, and we can just say const r is equal to date dot get hours. Basically, if ours is greater than 12, we basically want it so date dot get hours minus 12, because if it's like 1 o'clock, it's gonna say R13, so we just want to minus that and make it 1. And if it's not greater than 12, then we just want date dot get hours, and that should be good. And we can just say const minutes equal date dot get minutes, and we just want to say if it's greater than 10, so greater than or equal to 10, we just want to write date dot get minutes, and if it's not greater than or equal to 10, we want date, so we want to return basically 0 and then date dot get minutes, and that should be good. And basically we can write const time equal time span equal document dot create element, and we can just call the span. We can just say span time span dot inner text is equal to, we can just say um, uh, r and then colon minutes, and that should be good. And we can just make it so that our name p dot append child time span, and this should be good. And now if you refresh the page, we can just say like SEPA again and say hello. Whoops, we forgot to write this. I think we forgot everywhere. A lot of places. Messed it up. Yep. That should do it. And if we refresh that, we just say SEPA hello. Send it. Yep, we get the time. And we get the name. And over here we get the same. If we just do like Bob, and we do hello, we get that too. Now the only thing is it's not in one like whole line, so we can just add some styles by basically giving this div a class name of text div, and we can go to basically our HTML over here and just say dot text div display flex, and we want to justify content space between, and we want and this should be pretty good. And if you say SEPA, hey, yep, as you can see, it works. And we might just want to add a class name for name p. So let's just say name p dot class name is equal to text details. We can just go back here and just say dot text details, and we can just say display flex direction column, and we can just say that we want this and the text details span to have a text align of end. And if you do this, we can just say hey, sorry, not hey, I'll make this SEPA, and we'll make this hey, send this, and it looks pretty good. You know, it's on both sides. We're gonna say like Bob, be like, what's up? And it's coming. And if we just add a few more messages, you can see you can scroll. Now we want it to automatically scroll when we add too many messages, right? So to fix this, basically what we want to do is that every time we append message, we want to just say a div dot scroll into view. We want to pass in a some things like behavior, and we just want to make this smooth. Smooth. And now if you refresh this and we just like write like something like Bob, and we write like a lot of messages, you see every time we send, it automatically scrolls down, which is nice. And one other thing is if we don't write a name for now, it shows nothing, but we want to say like something like anonymous because we don't want to just say nothing. So to fix that, what we can do is over here we can make it display name and just say display name, or if not, then say anonymous. And now if you refresh the thing and say like Seppa, and we just like keep on typing random stuff, and we now not have a name, for instance, it says anonymous, which is what we want. So that is working. The last thing to making this app truly functional is we need to make it so it shows when somebody is typing. Okay, so now what we're going to do is detect when a user is typing a message, right? So the way we're going to do that is just say text message dot add event listener input, so we know that they're adding input, and then just console log quickly um, typing just to see it's working. And if you just refresh this and type, you see it's saying typing, typing, typing. So we know it's working. Now we want to create an object that has all the users currently typing. So let's just say let active typers object, and we're gonna just set this to nothing so far, and that's great. We basically on input we want to say socket dot emit use emit typing, and we want to pass in a few things. We want to pass in the user ID and display the name basically, and we can get the name just going to say const name is equal to display name dot name, and that's good. And now we can go back to our server and detect whoever's typing. So we can just say socket dot on emit typing. We can get the, so we can get multiple things, right? So we also need the room ID. So let's just pass in that ID. So room ID, user ID, and name. So room ID, user ID, and the name, right? And let's set this in arrow function, and let's again copy this line of code and paste it over here, and something new message just to say user typing, and we want to pass in the user ID and the name, and that should be good. Now if we come back here and let's just say dot socket dot on user typing, sorry, we want to get the user ID and the name, and we want to basically inactive user type, basically if active typers object dot user ID it is not, basically saying like, this doesn't exist. We want to make it that so that it does exist. So user ID, and we want to set it equal to name. Okay, and now it's set to that. And what we want is, okay, so now what we want to do is basically append this user that is typing to a div that has like all the users that are current typing. So we need to create a div in our room.ejs. So let's go into our messaging section. Let's just create a div and call this with a class of active typers, and let's query select that. So I'm going to just say const active typers equal document dot query select dot active typers, and we want it so that now since that's already there, we don't want this add text to be appending it to that just like after. We want it like right before the that active typers thing. So we can just say insert before, and we want to insert the div, and we want to insert it before the active typers. So that's good. And now let's go back to here, and basically we just want to const div, and we can call this document query selector, and call this just div, and we can just say const p equal document dot query selector, and we can call it p, and we can just say p dot inner text actually is equal to um, the name and is typing. Basically that's what we want to say, and we just want to say div dot append child p, and that should be good. And basically we want to say active typers dot append child div. Now what we want to do is we want to remove this div after a little bit amount of time, because you know, if the user stops typing, we don't want that div to still be there. So we can just create like const timeout amount equals to like 2000, but like 2000 milliseconds, and we just say it's a timeout. Sorry, not here, but yes, we can just say set timeout, and we can just say we want that so that div dot is just removed, and we can just down here write timeout amount. So basically after 2 seconds, remove it. And if I'm correctly assuming, this should be working, and we can test this by bringing this out here and testing it. So if we write, so again, if you just refresh this, X out, and we write Mahit, and I start typing, it doesn't work, and that's probably because, well, if I send it, that works. One other thing we need to do is, well, oh, I think it's, let's see if there's an error. User ID is not defined versus 33. So, we messed up over here. We meant to write user ID, and if this is correct, working, I can write Mahit, be like, it doesn't seem to be working. No error there. Oh, there's an error. Cannot set inner text of null. So 42, there's one more error. 42p. Oh, we query selected. I really do not mean that. I'm sorry. I meant create element. I don't know what I was thinking. Create element. And now I believe it should work. I think there's one other error. So is typing, yes, because I actually forgot, actually messed up on writing display name dot name. It's actually a value, and if I refresh this and I refresh this, if I write or SEPA and I type, it says SEPA is typing. Same way over here, if I type like Bob and I said Bob is typing, so everything's working. Now, there's only one other error, is that if display name value is nothing, we just want it so that it says anonymous again. So let's just say anonymous. And aside from this issue, there's two other issues. One of those issues is that when you remove the div, we don't remove it from the active typers object, so we want to do that. So let's just write active typers object and just say user ID, and we just want to set it equal to null. And the other thing we need to do is that imagine that before this 2-second timeout of removing the div, the user sends a new message. We want to remove it if he sends the new message before this timeout. So what we're gonna do is actually in the text object that we made up here, we want to also include an ID, a user ID. So we can just set that equal to user ID. And with that, we can actually get it over here too, user ID. Now, let's actually call this user ID, and that should be good. And now what we want to do is just say if user ID is not equal to user ID, basically saying it's somebody else's text message, not yours. You want to basically first of all get all typers, which is equal to document array dot from active typers dot children, and with the all typers you just want to say all typers dot for each typer. We want to check if basically the typer is the one with the is the one that added the text. So we need to actually give, whenever we create a new when we add a typer, we want to actually give it an ID. So over here, when we say a div, we append a div to that typers. We actually want to set the div to have an ID. So div.id is going to equal to user ID, and basically now we can just say typer dot ID, like if typer dot ID is equal to user ID, then all we want to do is make it so that this typer is removed. So we can just remove it, and that should be it. So we just want to lastly add active typers, and just select the user ID and just set it equal to null, like we did previously, and save it. Now, if we refresh this, we should be done with our basic chat application. So let's just write nothing, and if I type, it says anonymous typing. And now let me just show you for proof. If I type this link in another tab and I change the link slightly, even slightly, and I'm typing over here, it doesn't show I'm typing. Neither do if I send this, it doesn't show here. It only shows in the room that I sent it to. So thank you for watching this video. I know it was a bit long, but I hope you stayed through to watch this all. And thank you if you did. Subscribe and hit the bell icon below. And if you want to check out the finished product, I did link the Git repo in the description below.